The sound of her laughter cut through the elegant dining room like broken glass, sharp and deliberate and designed to wound. My daughter-in-law Vanessa stood there in the entrance of Marcello's, her perfectly manicured hand covering her mouth in mock surprise, her eyes scanning me from head to toe with unconcealed disdain. I was wearing a simple navy cardigan over a white blouse and comfortable slacks. My silver hair pulled back in a practical bun. My only jewelry, the pearl earrings my late husband had given me on our 20th anniversary, compared to her designer cocktail dress and statement necklace. I suppose I looked plain, ordinary, perhaps even out of place in the upscale restaurant my son had chosen for our family dinner. "Oh, Margaret," she said loudly enough for the nearby tables to hear, her voice dripping with condescension. "Did you not get the memo that we were dining at Marcello's tonight? This is one of the finest restaurants in the city. People dress appropriately here. You look like you are going to a grocery store." My son Benjamin stood beside her, his face flushing red with embarrassment, though I could not tell if he was embarrassed for me or by me. He touched Vanessa's arm gently, whispering something I could not hear, but she shrugged him off with an irritated gesture. She was still smiling at me, that patronizing smile I had come to know so well over the 3 years she had been married to my son. The smile that said she thought I was simple and unsophisticated and beneath her. "Perhaps next time we can send you a list of acceptable attire," she continued, her voice carrying across the restaurant. "We would hate for you to feel uncomfortable or out of place in establishments like this. I know these high-end venues can be intimidating for people who are not accustomed to fine dining." I stood there feeling the heat rise in my cheeks, feeling the curious stares of other diners, feeling the familiar sting of humiliation that Vanessa seemed to delight in delivering. I wanted to defend myself, to explain that I had dressed comfortably because I had been working all day, to tell her that her cruelty was unnecessary and hurtful. But the words stuck in my throat, and I simply nodded, following them to the table the hostess indicated, my head down, my heart heavy with the weight of yet another small humiliation in a long series of them. What Vanessa did not know, what she could not have known because I had worked so hard to keep it private, was that the elegant restaurant where she was currently mocking my appearance was mine. I owned Marcello's. I had owned it for 15 years, building it from a struggling neighborhood bistro into one of the most sought-after dining destinations in the city. Every table she looked at, every piece of crystal and silver, every carefully crafted dish that would be served to us that evening, all of it was mine. But she did not know that. Benjamin did not know that. Nobody in my family knew that, because I had kept my business life separate from my family life, wanting my relationships to be based on love rather than what I could provide. Sitting at that table, listening to Vanessa chatter about her latest shopping trip and her plans to redecorate their already perfect house, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt and humiliation began to crystallize into something harder, something clearer. I had been accepting her disrespect for years, telling myself that keeping the peace was more important than defending myself, that being a good mother-in-law meant swallowing my pride and tolerating her cruelty. But sitting there in my own restaurant, being mocked in my own establishment, I realized I was done. I was done being diminished. I was done being treated like I was less than. I was done protecting people who had no respect for me. But I am getting ahead of myself. To understand how I arrived at that moment, how I came to be sitting in my own restaurant, pretending not to own it while my daughter-in-law ridiculed me, you need to understand the path that led me there, the sacrifices I made, the hopes I held, and the slow, painful realization that sometimes the people you love most are the ones who value you least. 25 years ago, I was a young widow with a 10-year-old son and a desperate need to provide for us both. My husband Richard had died suddenly from a heart condition nobody knew he had, leaving me with a mortgage, a child to raise, and exactly $800 in our savings account. The life insurance policy he thought he had was invalid due to a technicality, and I found myself alone and terrified, trying to figure out how to survive. I had worked as a cook in my mother's small restaurant growing up, learning traditional Italian recipes passed down through generations. developing an instinct for flavors and combinations that pleased people. After Richard died, I took a job as a line cook at a local diner, working double shifts, coming home exhausted to spend a few precious hours with Benjamin before collapsing into bed and doing it all again the next day. Benjamin was such a good child during those difficult years. He never complained about the thrift store clothes or the modest apartment or the dinners that were often simple because I was too tired to cook elaborately after cooking all day at work. He helped with laundry and dishes. He did his homework without being asked. He told me he loved me every night before bed, and I held on to those words like lifelines, reminding myself why I was working so hard, what I was fighting for. I saved every penny I could, living as frugally as possible, dreaming of something better. When Benjamin was 15, an opportunity appeared. A small neighborhood restaurant called Marcello's was going out of business, and the owner was desperate to sell. The location was good, right in an up-and-coming neighborhood, but the restaurant itself was run down and losing money. Most people saw it as a failing business. I saw it as a chance. I used everything I had saved as a down payment and took out a loan for the rest. A terrifying amount of debt that kept me awake at night, wondering if I had made a catastrophic mistake. I took over Marcello's and poured every ounce of energy I had into making it succeed. I worked 18-hour days, cooking, serving, cleaning, managing, doing everything myself because I could not afford to hire help. Benjamin often came to the restaurant after school, doing his homework in a back booth, helping bus tables when we got busy. "Mom, you are going to work yourself to exhaustion," he would say, watching me rush between the kitchen and the dining room. "This is for us," I would reply. "This is for our future. Someday this restaurant will be successful, and you will be able to go to any college you want. I am building something for both of us." And I did build it. Slowly, painfully, one satisfied customer at a time. I built Marcello's into something special. I refined the menu, focusing on authentic Italian cuisine made with the freshest ingredients. I created an atmosphere that was elegant but welcoming. I trained staff to provide impeccable service. I worked harder than I had ever worked in my life, sacrificing sleep and social life and any personal time, driven by the vision of giving my son the opportunities I never had. The restaurant began to succeed. Critics noticed us. Word spread. Reservations became hard to get. Revenue increased. I was able to pay off the initial loan and invest in expansions and improvements. Within 5 years, Marcello's had a waiting list and a reputation as one of the finest Italian restaurants in the city. Within 10 years, I owned the building outright and had enough money saved to ensure Benjamin could attend any university he chose without taking on debt. But here is what I did not do. I did not tell Benjamin the full extent of my success. He knew I owned a restaurant. He knew I worked hard. But I never discussed the financial details, never mentioned how profitable the business had become, never explained that I was now quite wealthy. I lived modestly, in the same comfortable but unassuming house I had bought when he was in high school, driving a practical sedan, wearing simple clothes, avoiding any displays of wealth or luxury. Why did I hide it? Because I wanted Benjamin to build his own life based on his own merits, not to rely on my money or see me as a source of financial support. I wanted him to be proud of his own achievements, to develop his own work ethic, to understand the value of earning what you have. I thought I was teaching him important lessons about self-reliance and character. Looking back now, I realize I may have been teaching him something else entirely, that his mother was someone whose accomplishments did not matter, someone whose success was invisible, someone who could be taken for granted. Benjamin went to college and studied business, graduating with honors. I paid for his education from my restaurant earnings, but I told him the money came from careful savings and some investments Richard had made before he died. He never questioned it, never wondered how a woman who had worked as a diner cook could afford an expensive private university. He accepted my explanations and focused on his own life, which is what I thought I wanted. After college, Benjamin got a job at a marketing firm and quickly moved up through the ranks. He was smart and ambitious and successful, everything I had hoped he would be. He dated occasionally, but nothing serious until he met Vanessa at a company event. She was beautiful and polished, working in public relations, from a wealthy family, exactly the kind of woman I imagined would never look twice at the son of a widowed restaurant owner. But Benjamin was handsome and successful in his own right, and Vanessa seemed genuinely interested in him. They dated for a year before he proposed, and I was thrilled that my son had found someone to share his life with. I welcomed Vanessa into our family with open arms, hoping we would develop the kind of close relationship I had always imagined having with a daughter-in-law. The first signs of trouble appeared during the wedding planning. Vanessa wanted an elaborate celebration at an exclusive country club, with hundreds of guests and every expensive detail imaginable. The wedding was being paid for primarily by her parents, but there were expectations that Benjamin's side would contribute substantially as well. "We need at least $30,000 from your mother," Vanessa told Benjamin during a planning session I was invited to attend. "My parents are covering the venue and the catering, but your family needs to handle the flowers, the band, and the photographer." Benjamin looked uncomfortable. "Vanessa, that is a lot of money. I am not sure my mom can afford that." Vanessa glanced at me with barely concealed disdain. "Well, perhaps she can take out a loan or something. This is her only son's wedding. Surely she can make some sacrifices." I wanted to tell her that I had been making sacrifices for Benjamin his entire life, that $30,000 was nothing compared to what I had already given, that I could write a check for the entire wedding without blinking. But I also wanted to see how Benjamin would handle it, whether he would defend me or demand I provide money I supposedly did not have. "I will talk to her privately," Benjamin said, not quite meeting my eyes. That conversation happened 2 days later. Benjamin came to my house looking nervous and apologetic. "Mom, I know this is a lot to ask, but Vanessa really wants this wedding to be perfect. Her family is paying for most of it, but they expect us to contribute too. I have some savings, but not enough to cover everything. Is there any way you could help with about $30,000? I know it is a huge amount, and I will pay you back, I promise." I looked at my son, the boy I had raised alone, the man I had worked myself to exhaustion for, and I saw him asking me to go into debt for a wedding that was already costing a ridiculous amount of money. The right thing to do would have been to tell him the truth, to explain that I could easily afford it, to have an honest conversation about money and expectations. But some stubborn part of me wanted him to value me for who I was, not for what I could provide financially. "That is a lot of money, sweetheart," I said carefully. "Let me see what I can do. I might be able to take a loan against the house." Benjamin looked relieved, but also guilty. "Are you sure, Mom? I do not want you to struggle." "I want you to be happy," I replied, which was true, even if the way I was managing the situation was questionable. I paid for the wedding expenses Vanessa demanded, writing a check from my business account, telling Benjamin I had borrowed the money. The wedding was beautiful and excessive, exactly what Vanessa had wanted. I wore a simple dress I bought off the rack, sitting in the front row watching my son marry a woman who had already shown me who she was, hoping I was wrong about her, hoping she would grow to appreciate our family over time. The disrespect started small. Comments about my clothes being outdated, suggestions that I should do something different with my hair, little corrections about my grammar or my table manners, or the way I pronounced certain words. Each comment was delivered with a smile, framed as helpful advice from someone who knew better, and each one made me feel smaller and less valued. Benjamin did not seem to notice, or if he noticed, he did not think it was important enough to address. When I mentioned feeling hurt by Vanessa's constant criticism, he told me I was being too sensitive, that Vanessa was just trying to help me, that I should appreciate her input. It became easier to stay quiet, to accept the small cuts, to tell myself that maintaining family harmony was worth the cost to my pride. After they married, I helped them in numerous ways, always quietly, always without acknowledgement. When they wanted to buy a house but did not quite have enough for the down payment, I gave Benjamin $50,000, telling him it was money I had been saving for years from the restaurant. When Vanessa wanted to start her own PR firm but needed startup capital, I provided another $40,000, again claiming it came from careful savings and some successful investments. I paid for vacations, furniture, car repairs, medical bills, all of it presented as modest help from a mother who was scraping together what she could. They accepted every penny without question, never wondering how a woman who supposedly lived so modestly could produce such substantial sums, never asking about my own needs or whether I could actually afford to be so generous. And through it all, Vanessa's disrespect grew. She began excluding me from family events, telling Benjamin that his mother would not enjoy whatever activity they had planned, or that the gathering was just for their friends, or that there simply was not room for me. Benjamin went along with it, choosing his wife over his mother time and time again, and I swallowed the hurt because I did not want to create conflict. She criticized my cooking despite the fact that I was a professionally trained chef running a successful restaurant. She mocked my taste in decorating, though my restaurant was regularly featured in design magazines. She implied I was unsophisticated and uneducated, though I had taken countless courses in business management, culinary arts, and wine selection to make my restaurant succeed. The worst part was not the disrespect itself, but Benjamin's complicity in it. He would laugh uncomfortably when Vanessa made her cutting remarks. He would change the subject rather than defend me. He would later tell me that I needed to develop thicker skin, that Vanessa did not mean anything by it, that I was creating problems where none existed. He had become so enmeshed with his wife's worldview that he could no longer see his own mother clearly. 6 months before the dinner at Marcello's, something happened that should have been a wake-up call. I had a minor medical scare, some chest pains that sent me to the emergency room. It turned out to be nothing serious, just stress and exhaustion from working too hard. But I spent a frightening few hours in the hospital undergoing tests before getting the all clear. I called Benjamin from the hospital, expecting him to come, needing the comfort of his presence during a scary moment. He sounded distracted on the phone. "Mom, I am really busy with a project at work. If it is not serious, can this wait? I will call you tonight." "I am in the emergency room, Benjamin. I had chest pains. They are running tests." There was a pause, and I could hear Vanessa's voice in the background, asking who was on the phone. "Okay, well, keep me posted on what the doctors say. I really cannot leave right now. You understand, right?" He did not come. He did not call back that night. He texted 2 days later asking if everything was okay, and when I said yes, he replied with a thumbs up emoji and nothing else. That moment crystallized something for me, a painful recognition that I had become optional in my son's life, an afterthought, someone whose needs were always secondary to his convenience. I started pulling back after that, declining invitations to the dinners I was occasionally included in, making excuses about being busy with the restaurant. Benjamin did not seem to notice or care. Weeks would go by without contact, and when we did speak, the conversations were superficial and brief. I was losing my son, not to distance or circumstances, but to apathy and disrespect, and I did not know how to fight it. Then came the invitation to dinner at Marcello's. Benjamin called, sounding almost warm, saying that he and Vanessa wanted to take me out for a nice meal, that it had been too long since we spent time together, that they missed me. I was so hungry for connection with my son that I ignored the warning voice in my head and agreed immediately. I spent the day before the dinner working at the restaurant, checking in with my manager Carlos, reviewing the updated menu, ensuring everything was running smoothly. Marcello's had evolved over the years into something beyond what I had originally imagined. We had a full staff now, excellent chefs I had trained personally, a sommelier, a dessert specialist. The restaurant operated beautifully without requiring my constant presence, which gave me the freedom to step back and let my team shine. Carlos had been with me for 12 years, starting as a line cook and working his way up to general manager. He knew everything about the business, and he knew about my complicated relationship with my family, though I had never shared the full details. "You seem nervous about tomorrow night," he observed as we reviewed reservation schedules. "It is just dinner with my son and daughter-in-law," I replied, not quite meeting his eyes. "Here?" They are coming here? He looked surprised. Do they know you own the place? No, and I want to keep it that way. Benjamin chose Marcello's because Vanessa wanted to eat somewhere fancy. I do not want to make a big deal about it. Can you make sure the staff treats me like any other guest? Carlos frowned. Margaret, why do you hide this from them? You have built something incredible. You should be proud. They should know what you have accomplished. It is complicated, I said, which was true even if I could not fully explain why I had made the choices I had made. That evening, I stood in my closet trying to decide what to wear. Part of me wanted to dress elegantly, to show Vanessa that I could look sophisticated when I chose to. But another part of me, the part that was tired of pretending and performing, chose comfort over style. I put on my simple navy cardigan and white blouse, my comfortable slacks, my practical shoes. I looked exactly like who I was, a 62-year-old woman who had worked hard all her life and had nothing to prove to anyone. When I arrived at Marcello's, I parked in the back lot where I usually parked, entering through the front like a regular customer, even though I could have used the private entrance. The hostess on duty was Maria, who had worked for me for 8 years. Her eyes widened when she saw me, and I gave her a subtle shake of my head, indicating she should treat me like any other guest. That was when Vanessa saw me and started laughing. That was when she made her comments about my outfit and my unsophistication. That was when I felt the familiar shame and humiliation, followed immediately by a cold, clear anger that felt different from anything I had experienced before. I followed them to the table, watching Vanessa preen and pose, watching Benjamin apologize quietly for my appearance, watching them both treat me like an embarrassment they had to tolerate. The server who came to take our drink order was Antonio, one of my best waiters. His eyes met mine with a question, and I gave him the slightest nod, indicating he should proceed normally. What do you think of this place, Margaret? Vanessa asked with exaggerated enthusiasm, her tone suggesting she was speaking to a child who had never seen anything nice before. Have you ever been somewhere this elegant? The ambiance is just exquisite. I'm sure it is very different from the places you usually eat. It is lovely, I said quietly, my hands folded in my lap. We come here often, she continued, though I knew from the reservation records that this was only their 3rd visit. We know the owner personally. Well, Benjamin knows him from business connections. The owner is very selective about who he allows to dine here. We are fortunate to have connections. I almost laughed at that. The owner she was referring to was likely Carlos, who often acted as the face of the restaurant in public settings while I remained behind the scenes. Benjamin had probably met him once or twice and assumed he owned the place. How wonderful that you have such connections, I murmured, taking a sip of water. Dinner proceeded with Vanessa dominating the conversation, talking about a charity gala she was planning, a designer purse she had just purchased, her opinions on various social issues. Benjamin interjected occasionally, but mostly watched his wife with adoring eyes, laughing at her jokes, agreeing with her observations. I sat there feeling invisible, wondering why they had even invited me if they had no interest in including me in the conversation. When the appetizers arrived, perfectly plated burrata with heirloom tomatoes and basil oil, Vanessa made a show of tasting it and declaring it adequate, though not as good as a restaurant she had visited in Italy. I knew the chef had trained in Italy specifically to perfect that dish, that the tomatoes were locally grown and specially selected, that every element on that plate represented someone's expertise and pride. But I said nothing. The main courses came next, and I had specifically requested that the chef prepare his signature osso buco for our table. It was one of my own recipes, something I had perfected over years, a dish that had been featured in food magazines and television shows. Vanessa took one bite and wrinkled her nose. It is a bit heavy, do not you think? I prefer lighter fare. European portions. American restaurants always serve too much food. She pushed the plate away after eating perhaps 2 bites of a dish that represented hours of preparation and decades of culinary refinement. Something in me snapped in that moment. Not loudly or dramatically, but quietly and completely. I was done. I was done watching my food be disrespected. I was done sitting silently while this woman who knew nothing about me or my life treated me like I was worthless. I was done protecting people who had no respect for me. I excused myself from the table, saying I needed to use the restroom. Instead, I walked through the dining room toward the back, catching Carlos's eye and gesturing for him to follow me. We stood in the private hallway leading to the kitchen, away from customers and staff. "I need you to do something for me," I said quietly. "Anything, Margaret. What do you need?" "When it is time to present the check for table 12, I want you to tell them that the owner would like to speak with them personally. Bring them to my office." Carlos's eyes lit up with understanding. "You are going to tell them?" "I am going to tell them," I confirmed. It is time. I returned to the table, where Vanessa was explaining to Benjamin why they should consider upgrading to a luxury vehicle, something with more prestige that would reflect properly on their status. I sat down and picked up my fork, eating my osso buco slowly, savoring every bite of the dish I had created, the dish that represented my expertise and my success, and everything this woman thought I was incapable of achieving. Dessert came and went. A beautiful panna cotta with berry compote that Vanessa again barely touched. Coffee was served. The dining room began to clear as the evening grew late. Finally, Antonio brought the leather folio containing the check to our table. Benjamin reached for it, but before he could open it, Carlos appeared beside our table, impeccably dressed in his dark suit, his manner professionally courteous. "Good evening," he said smoothly. "I am Carlos Mendoza, the general manager of Marcello's. I hope you have enjoyed your dinner this evening." "It was adequate," Vanessa said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Though I have had better in Europe. I am sorry to hear it did not meet your expectations," Carlos replied without a hint of offense. "The owner of Marcello's has requested to speak with you personally. She likes to greet special guests when possible. Would you be willing to accompany me to her office for a moment?" Vanessa's face lit up. "The owner wants to meet us. Benjamin, did you hear that? Your connections really do matter here. Of course we will meet with her." "How exciting!" Benjamin looked pleased, but also slightly confused. "I did not mention we were coming tonight. I wonder how she knew. She makes it her business to know about all our guests," Carlos said diplomatically. "If you will follow me." They stood, Vanessa smoothing her dress and checking her reflection in a compact mirror, preparing to meet someone she assumed would be impressed by her. Benjamin helped me up from my chair, an automatic gesture that surprised me with its thoughtfulness. "You should probably wait here, Mom," he said gently. "This is probably a business thing. Vanessa and I will just be a moment." "Actually," Carlos interjected smoothly, "the owner specifically requested to meet with all three of you." Vanessa looked annoyed. "Why would she want to meet Margaret? Is this some kind of customer feedback thing?" "Please, just follow me," Carlos said, his professionalism never wavering. We walked through the restaurant, past the kitchen where my chefs were finishing the evening service, down the hallway to my private office. Carlos opened the door and gestured for them to enter. The office was elegant but professional, with my culinary school certificates on the walls, photographs of the restaurant through the years, the awards we had won, the magazine features we had been included in. Vanessa walked in, looking around with a proprietary air, expecting to be greeted by someone who would be impressed by her presence. Benjamin followed, still looking slightly confused about why this meeting was necessary. I entered last, and Carlos closed the door behind us. "Where is the owner?" Vanessa asked impatiently. Carlos smiled, a genuine expression of satisfaction. "You are looking at her. Allow me to properly introduce Margaret Torres, owner of Marcello's for the past 15 years, one of the most successful restaurateurs in the city, and recipient of numerous culinary awards and recognitions." The silence that followed was absolute. Vanessa's mouth fell open in shock. Benjamin stared at me like I had suddenly transformed into someone he did not recognize. I stood there quietly, letting the truth settle over them, watching their expressions shift from confusion to disbelief to dawning realization. "What is he talking about?" Vanessa finally managed to say. "This is some kind of joke." "It is not a joke," I said quietly. "I own this restaurant. I have owned it for 15 years. I built it from a failing neighborhood bistro into what it is today. Every dish you ate tonight was created from my recipes. The osso buco you barely touched and dismissed as too heavy. That is my signature dish. featured in Gourmet magazine and Food and Wine. The chef who prepared it trained under me. The elegant ambiance you praised? I designed it. Every single element of this establishment that you admired tonight exists because I created it. Benjamin sank into one of the chairs, his face pale. Mom, I do not understand. Why did not you tell me? All these years you let me think. I let you think what, Benjamin? That I was just a simple woman running a modest restaurant? That I struggled to make ends meet? That I had to borrow money to help pay for your wedding? I kept my voice steady, calm, though my heart was racing. I did not lie to you. I simply did not correct your assumptions. You never asked about my business. You never showed interest in what I had built. You were content to see me as someone small and simple, someone who needed your protection, rather than someone who had been protecting you your entire life. Vanessa had recovered from her shock and was now looking defensive. This is ridiculous. If you owned this restaurant, why would you dress like that? Why would you hide it? What kind of person pretends to be poor when they are not? I never pretended to be poor, I corrected her. I chose to live modestly. There is a difference. I worked hard to build this business, and I worked hard to ensure my son could build his own life without relying on my money. I wanted him to develop his own character, his own work ethic, his own sense of accomplishment. What I did not anticipate was that he would use my modest lifestyle as an excuse to disrespect me, or that he would marry someone who would treat me with such contempt. Contempt? I never treated you with contempt. Vanessa's voice had gone shrill, defensive. I tried to help you. I tried to give you advice about how to present yourself better, how to fit in with our social circle. I was doing you a favor. You mocked me, I said, my voice still calm, but carrying an edge now. Tonight, in the dining room of my own restaurant, you laughed at my appearance and suggested I wasn't sophisticated enough to dine here. You have spent 3 years making me feel less than, criticizing everything about me, excluding me from family events, treating me like an embarrassment. And my son stood by and let it happen. Benjamin stood up abruptly. Mom, I did not know. If I had known about the restaurant, about your success, would it have made a difference? I interrupted him. Would you have treated me with more respect? If you knew I was wealthy, because that is exactly the problem, Benjamin. You should have respected me regardless of my financial status. I am your mother. I raised you alone after your father died. I worked multiple jobs to keep a roof over our heads. I sacrificed everything to give you opportunities I never had. And you have spent the last 3 years allowing your wife to treat me like I am worthless because I did not dress fancy enough, or talk sophisticated enough, or fit into her narrow definition of what matters. That is not fair, Benjamin protested weakly. What is not fair? I said, my voice rising slightly for the first time, is that I gave you over $200,000 in the past 3 years, telling you it came from savings and investments, and you never once questioned how a woman working at a modest restaurant could have that kind of money available. What is not fair is that I had a medical emergency 6 months ago, and you could not be bothered to come to the hospital because you were busy with work. What is not fair is that I have poured love and resources and support into your life, and in return, I have received nothing but disrespect and dismissal. Vanessa had gone very quiet, and I could see the calculations happening behind her eyes. She was realizing how much money she had accepted from someone she had treated terribly, how much she had underestimated me, how thoroughly she had miscalculated the dynamics of this family. I think we should all calm down, she said, her tone suddenly conciliatory. Clearly there have been misunderstandings on all sides. Margaret, I apologize if I ever made you feel disrespected. That was never my intention. Perhaps we can sit down and have a real conversation about all of this. Clear the air, start fresh. No, I said simply. We cannot start fresh. This is not a misunderstanding. This is a pattern of behavior that has shown me exactly who both of you are. You, Vanessa, are someone who values people based solely on their perceived status and wealth. And you, Benjamin, are someone who abandoned his mother the moment it became inconvenient to value her. Mom, please, Benjamin said, and I could hear the desperation in his voice. "Do not do this. You are my mother. I love you. I love you too," I replied, and I meant it despite everything. But love without respect is meaningless. Love without basic kindness is just a word people say when they want something. I walked to my desk and pulled out a folder I had prepared after the last time Vanessa had humiliated me. The last time Benjamin had chosen her over me. Inside were copies of every check I had written to them, every financial contribution I had made, every loan I had given, all carefully documented with dates and amounts. "This is a record of every dollar I have given you over the past 3 years, I said, handing the folder to Benjamin. "It totals $214,000. I told you it came from savings and loans against my house, but it did not. It came from the profits of this restaurant, from my hard work, from the success I built. I want it back. All of it." Benjamin's hands shook as he took the folder. "Mom, you said those were gifts. You said you did not expect repayment." "I said that when I believed I had a son who valued me," I replied. "But gifts are given with love, and what I have received in return is not love. It is exploitation. So no, they are not gifts anymore. They are loans, and I want them repaid. You have 6 months to return the money with reasonable interest. If you cannot pay it back, we can arrange a payment plan, but I will not continue to support people who do not respect me." Vanessa had gone very pale. "We do not have that kind of money available. We spent it on the house, on the business, on investments. You cannot just demand it back now. That is not fair." "Life is rarely fair," I said. "You will figure it out. You are both intelligent, successful people with good jobs. You will find a way to repay what you owe, just like I found a way to build a successful business from nothing after my husband died." I turned back to Benjamin, who was staring at the folder like it contained a bomb rather than bank statements. "I love you and I always will, but I will not continue to be part of your life in this capacity. I will not continue to be dismissed and disrespected and treated like I am less than. When you are ready to treat me with the basic respect any person deserves, regardless of their wealth or status, you can reach out to me. Until then, I think it is best if we have some distance." "You are cutting me out of your life?" Benjamin looked devastated, finally showing real emotion beyond his shock. "Over money? This is not about money," I said gently. "This is about respect. This is about you watching your wife treat me cruelly for 3 years and never once defending me. This is about you forgetting that I exist unless you need something from me. This is about you becoming someone I do not recognize, someone who values appearance and status over substance and character. I did not raise you to be this person, and I will not enable you to continue being this person." Carlos, who had been standing quietly near the door, cleared his throat. "I should mention that there are also documents in that folder outlining Mrs. Torres's estate plans. She has updated her will recently. Everything she owns, including this restaurant, is being left to charity upon her passing. I thought you should be aware of that. I had not actually updated my will yet, but Carlos's improvisation was perfect. I saw the realization dawn on Vanessa's face that not only did she need to repay money she had already spent, but there would be no inheritance coming, no future windfall to count on. "You are being vindictive," Vanessa said, her voice hard, now that she understood there was nothing to gain from being conciliatory. "You are punishing us for not being mind readers, for not knowing about your secret restaurant and your secret money. This is manipulative and cruel." "No," I said firmly. "What is cruel is mocking someone in public for their appearance. What is manipulative is accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars from someone while treating them with contempt. What is vindictive is excluding a mother from her son's life because she does not fit your aesthetic standards. I am not punishing you. I am simply choosing to no longer participate in my own diminishment." I moved toward the door, and Carlos opened it for me. "The check for your dinner tonight has been taken care of," I said over my shoulder. "Consider it a farewell gift. My legal team will be in touch regarding the repayment schedule for the loans. I hope you both have a lovely evening." I walked out of my office, through the kitchen where my staff paused in their cleaning to watch me pass, out into the cool night air of the parking lot. My hands were shaking, my heart was racing, but I felt lighter than I had in years. I had finally stopped pretending. I had finally stopped accepting unacceptable treatment. I had finally stood up for myself, even though it meant potentially losing my son. I sat in my car for a long time before starting the engine, crying silently, grieving for the relationship I had hoped to have with Benjamin, mourning the loss of the family I had wanted to build. But underneath the grief was something else, something that felt almost like freedom. I had spent 3 years diminishing myself, hiding who I was, accepting disrespect because I was afraid of conflict. That version of me was gone now, burned away by the humiliation I had felt being mocked in my own restaurant. The next few days were difficult. Benjamin called repeatedly, but I let the calls go to voicemail. His messages started out angry and defensive, then became pleading, then finally settled into a kind of confused sadness. He did not understand how things had gotten so bad. He did not see his own complicity in the situation. He wanted me to explain it to him, to make him understand. But I was tired of explaining. I was tired of doing the emotional labor of teaching grown adults how to treat people with basic decency. Vanessa did not call, which did not surprise me. I did receive an email from her, carefully worded and clearly written with legal advice, claiming that the money I had given them had been gifts freely given with no expectation of repayment, that my sudden demand for return of those funds constituted harassment, and that she would be seeking legal counsel if I continued to pursue the matter. I forwarded the email to my attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia, who specialized in family law. She looked over the documentation I had provided and smiled in a way that made me glad she was on my side. "She is right that gifts are generally not legally recoverable," Patricia said. "However, there are exceptions, particularly in cases where gifts were given under false pretenses or obtained through fraud. Given that they accepted money from you while actively demeaning and excluding you, we might be able to make a case for undue influence or constructive fraud. But honestly, Margaret, do you really want to drag your son through a legal battle?" "No," I admitted. "I do not want to hurt him. I just want him to understand that actions have consequences. I want him to see that I am not someone to be taken advantage of." "Then my suggestion is this. Send them a letter offering to forgive the debt if they meet certain conditions. An apology, an acknowledgement of their behavior, an agreement to treat you with respect going forward. Give them a path to redemption that does not involve money. See if they are willing to take it." I thought about it for several days before deciding she was right. I did not need the money back. What I needed was acknowledgement, respect, change. I drafted a letter and had Patricia review it before sending it to both Benjamin and Vanessa. The letter outlined everything I had felt and observed over the past 3 years. It detailed specific instances of disrespect and exclusion. It explained the pain of being mocked in my own restaurant. It acknowledged that I had made mistakes too, that hiding my success had been a misguided attempt to teach lessons that had backfired. But it also offered a path forward, a genuine apology, a commitment to change, and it demonstrated a pattern of respectful behavior over time. And in return, I would forgive the debt and work toward rebuilding our relationship. The response came from Benjamin alone, 2 weeks after I sent the letter. He asked if we could meet in person. I suggested a coffee shop neutral territory, where neither of us had an advantage. We sat across from each other at a small table, both of us nervous, both of us carrying the weight of everything that had been said and done. "I read your letter about 20 times, Benjamin started, his hands wrapped around a coffee cup he was not drinking from. "And every time I read it, I understood a little more about how badly I failed you." "I do not need you to grovel," I said quietly. "I need you to understand. I do understand. Or I am starting to. You are right that I let Vanessa treat you badly. You are right that I valued my comfort over your dignity. You are right that I took advantage of your generosity without ever questioning where that generosity came from or what it cost you." He paused, tears forming in his eyes. "I became someone Dad would be ashamed of. The mention of Richard hit me unexpectedly hard. Your father would be proud of so much about you. Your work ethic, your success, your determination. But he would be disappointed in how you have treated the people who love you. He would expect better. I know. And I want to do better. But I need you to understand something too, Mom. Vanessa and I are getting divorced. I stared at him in shock. What? Why? Because your letter made me see what my marriage really was. I spent 3 years watching my wife treat you terribly. And I never stopped her because some part of me thought she was right. I thought you were simple and unsophisticated, and I was embarrassed by that. How messed up is that? I was embarrassed by my own mother because she did not fit into Vanessa's world of designer clothes and expensive restaurants. He wiped at his eyes roughly. After that night at Marcello's, after seeing what you had built, understanding what you had sacrificed, I started really looking at my life. And I realized I did not like who I had become. I did not like that my wife valued people based on their wealth and status. I did not like that I had adopted those same values. I did not like the person I was turning into. Benjamin, I do not want to be responsible for ending your marriage. You are not responsible. Vanessa and I ended our marriage by building it on superficial values. When I told her I wanted to apologize to you, that I wanted to make things right, she told me I was being ridiculous. She said you were manipulating me, that you had been hiding your wealth specifically to make us look bad, that we should sue you for emotional distress or something equally absurd. That is when I realized I did not want to be married to someone who thought that way. We talked for 2 more hours, really talked for the first time in years. Benjamin apologized repeatedly, not with excuses, but with genuine remorse and understanding. He asked about the restaurant, about how I had built it, about the struggles and triumphs I had never shared with him. He asked about my life, my dreams, my plans for the future. He listened in a way he hadn't listened in years, actually hearing me instead of just waiting for his turn to talk. It was not perfect. Years of damage could not be repaired in a single conversation, but it was a start. It was a genuine start based on honesty instead of pretense, on respect instead of obligation. Over the following months, Benjamin and I slowly rebuilt our relationship. He came to the restaurant regularly, sitting at the bar while I worked, watching me interact with my staff and customers, seeing me in my element. He asked questions about my business, my recipes, my plans for expansion. He met Carlos and my chefs and learned about the team I had built. His divorce from Vanessa was finalized after 8 months. It was contentious and expensive, with Vanessa fighting for every asset she could claim. But Benjamin held firm on the important things, and when it was over, he looked relieved rather than devastated. I am sorry for wasting 3 years of my life on someone who did not share my values, he told me one evening, as we sat in my restaurant after closing, sharing a bottle of wine. You did not waste them, I replied. You learned from them. That is different. Sometimes we have to experience what we do not want in order to understand what we do want. Benjamin started dating again eventually, but more carefully this time. He brought the women he was seeing to meet me early in the relationships, not at fancy dinners, but at casual lunches where we could actually talk. He asked my opinion, and more importantly, he listened when I shared my observations. He valued substance over style now, character over appearance. 2 years after that night at Marcello's, Benjamin met Hannah, a teacher who worked with special needs children. She was warm and kind and had no interest in designer labels or social status. She wore comfortable clothes and laughed easily and treated me like a person rather than an obstacle or an accessory. When Benjamin brought her to the restaurant for dinner, she asked thoughtful questions about the food and complimented my work genuinely. After they left, I called Benjamin. That is the one, I told him. If you let that woman go, you are a fool. He laughed. I know, Mom, I know. They married a year later in a simple ceremony at a botanical garden with close friends and family. Nothing extravagant or excessive. Hannah wore a dress she bought off the rack and looked beautiful. I wore a simple outfit and felt comfortable. The celebration was full of genuine joy and laughter. People who actually cared about each other gathered. to support a couple who had built their relationship on honesty and mutual respect. At the reception, Benjamin gave a speech thanking everyone for coming, but then he turned to me specifically. "I want to say something to my mom," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "A few years ago, I failed you in ways I'm still ashamed of. I let you be treated badly. I treated you badly. I valued the wrong things and lost sight of what actually mattered. You had every right to write me off, to decide I was not worth the effort. But instead, you taught me one of the hardest lessons I have ever learned. That love without respect is empty, and that real change requires facing uncomfortable truths about yourself. You taught me by example what strength looks like, what integrity looks like, what it means to stand up for yourself, even when it costs you something important. Everything I have, everything I am exists because you sacrificed for me. And I promise you, for the rest of my life, I will never forget that again. I will never take you for granted again. I love you, Mom, and I respect you more than anyone in the world." I cried through the entire speech, and half the guests cried with me. It was not perfect. Our relationship still had scars and would always carry the weight of those difficult years. But it was real. It was honest. It was built on a foundation of genuine respect and appreciation rather than obligation or expectation. As for Vanessa, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she married someone wealthy shortly after her divorce from Benjamin, a tech entrepreneur with family money. I hoped she would be happy, though I doubted she had learned anything from our conflict. Some people are incapable of valuing anything beyond surface appearances. That was not my problem anymore. I continued running Marcello's, though I gradually stepped back from daily operations, training younger chefs to take over, ensuring the restaurant would continue long after I was gone. I established a foundation that provided culinary school scholarships for single mothers trying to build careers in food service, giving other women the opportunities I had to fight for alone. I traveled more, exploring cuisines and cultures I had always been curious about. I built a life that was rich and fulfilling and entirely my own. On the 5-year anniversary of that dinner where everything changed, Benjamin and Hannah and their baby daughter came to Marcello's for a celebration. We sat at my favorite table in the corner, and I held my granddaughter Sophia while Benjamin and Hannah shared stories about their week. The baby looked at me with Richard's eyes, and I felt the completion of a circle, the sense that maybe everything we go through has purpose, even the painful parts. "What are you thinking about?" Benjamin asked, noticing my expression. "I am thinking about how grateful I am," I said honestly, "for all of it, even the hard parts, because the hard parts taught me to value myself. They taught me that I do not have to accept disrespect to maintain relationships. They taught me that standing up for yourself is not selfish. It is necessary." Hannah reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You taught Benjamin those things too. You taught him that love is not about performing or pretending. It is about seeing people clearly and choosing them anyway." That night after they left, I walked through my restaurant alone, running my hands over the tables I had chosen, looking at the photographs on the walls documenting 15 years of success, breathing in the lingering scents of garlic and wine and fresh bread. This place had saved me after Richard died. It had given me purpose and identity and security. It had been my secret and my strength. But more than that, it had been the catalyst for the hardest and most important lesson I ever taught my son. That people should be valued for who they are, not for what they can provide. That respect is not conditional on wealth or status. That standing up for yourself is not cruelty, it is survival. I had built something beautiful, not just in the restaurant, but in the second chance I had created for my family. I had torn down the walls of pretense and dishonesty and rebuilt something stronger. I had taught my son that love requires respect, that relationships require reciprocity, that no amount of blood relation excuses cruelty or dismissiveness. And I had learned that I was enough, exactly as I was, without pretense or performance or hiding. I was enough when I was a struggling widow working double shifts. I was enough when I was a successful restaurateur in simple clothes. I was enough without needing anyone else's validation or approval. That knowledge, hard won and paid for with tears and heartbreak, was the most valuable thing I owned. Today I learned that the clothes you wear do not define your worth, that people who judge based on appearances are revealing their own limitations, not yours. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop hiding your light to make others comfortable in their darkness. I learned that respect is not negotiable, that love without respect is just a word, and that standing up for yourself is the most loving thing you can do, not just for yourself, but for everyone who loves you and needs to understand how to treat you. I learned that secrets kept to protect others can sometimes become chains that bind you, that honesty, even when it is uncomfortable, is the foundation of genuine connection. I learned that you can love someone deeply and still refuse to accept their disrespect, that boundaries are not walls but bridges to healthier relationships. I learned that justice is not always immediate or obvious, that sometimes the greatest revenge is simply refusing to participate in your own diminishment, that the moment you stop accepting unacceptable treatment, you reclaim power you did not even realize you had given away. I learned that transformation often comes through pain, that the breaking points in our lives can become turning points if we are brave enough to stand in our truth, that rebuilding after betrayal is not about revenge, but about rediscovering who you are beneath the roles you have played and the expectations others have placed on you. Most importantly, I learned that you teach people how to treat you, not through words, but through what you accept, what you tolerate, what you allow to continue. For years, I had taught my son and his wife that disrespecting me carried no consequences, that I would absorb their cruelty and continue providing for them regardless of how they treated me. The moment I changed that equation, the moment I demanded respect as a condition of relationship, everything shifted. That shift was not easy. It cost me years of estrangement from my son. It cost me the fantasy of the perfect family I had imagined. It cost me my comfort and my peace and my carefully maintained pretense that everything was fine. But what I gained was infinitely more valuable: my self-respect, my son's genuine love, and a relationship built on truth instead of obligation. Standing in my restaurant that night, I understood that the woman who had sat silently while being mocked was gone, replaced by someone who knew her worth, who would not compromise her dignity for anyone's comfort, who had learned that love without respect is just another form of abuse, dressed up in prettier language. The simple navy cardigan Vanessa had laughed at still hung in my closet. I never threw it away. It had become a symbol to me, a reminder that there is profound dignity in simplicity, that elegance is not about designer labels, but about how you carry yourself, that the opinions of small-minded people reveal their limitations, not yours. Benjamin understood that now. He had learned painfully and slowly that his mother's worth wasn't determined by her appearance or her social status, but by her character, her strength, and her capacity to build something meaningful from nothing. He had learned that real success is not about the car you drive or the clothes you wear, but about the integrity you maintain and the people you lift up along the way. And little Sophia would grow up knowing her grandmother not as someone to be pitied or dismissed, but as someone who had overcome tremendous obstacles, who had built a successful business through sheer determination, who had stood up for herself even when it cost her something precious. She would learn that women can be strong and successful and humble all at once, that there is no contradiction in being powerful and unpretentious. That legacy, more than the restaurant or the money or any material thing I could leave behind, was what mattered. I had broken a cycle of disrespect and rebuilt something healthier for the next generation. I had shown my son that it is never too late to change, never too late to choose integrity over convenience, never too late to stand up for what is right. 5 years after that transformative dinner, my life looked different in almost every way. My relationship with Benjamin was stronger than it had ever been, built on honesty and mutual respect. My restaurant continued to thrive, now with a team of talented chefs I had mentored carrying forward the traditions I had established. My foundation had helped dozens of women build careers in culinary arts, giving them the independence and security I had fought so hard to achieve for myself. But more than any of those external successes, I had found peace. Peace with my choices, peace with my past, peace with the uncomfortable truth that sometimes loving someone means letting them face consequences, means refusing to rescue them from their own poor decisions, means standing firm even when your heart is breaking. The woman who walked through Marcello's that evening, the woman who had been mocked for her simple clothes and modest appearance, had discovered something Vanessa could never understand. That true elegance is not about what you wear, but about how you treat people. That real sophistication is not about knowing the right wines, but about having the wisdom to value character over status. That genuine success is not about accumulating wealth, but about building something meaningful that outlasts you. And in that discovery, in that hard-won understanding, I found a kind of freedom that no amount of money could buy, a self-respect that no one could take from me, a strength that would carry me through whatever challenges lay ahead. I learned that sometimes the people who underestimate you are giving you the greatest gift, the freedom to surprise them, to exceed their limited expectations, to prove that their judgments say everything about them and nothing about you. I learned that you do not need to announce your accomplishments to have value, but you also do not need to hide them to maintain relationships with people who should love you regardless. That the right people will celebrate your success, not feel threatened by it. And I learned that the best revenge is not destruction, but transformation. Not tearing others down, but building yourself up. Not proving them wrong through words, but through the undeniable evidence of a life well lived, of dignity maintained, of respect earned and demanded. Tonight, standing in my restaurant, surrounded by everything I had built, I felt gratitude for the journey, even the painful parts. Gratitude for the strength I discovered when I was forced to stand alone. Gratitude for the clarity that came from hitting bottom and choosing to rise. Gratitude for the opportunity to teach my son what real love looks like, what genuine respect requires, what it means to value people for who they are rather than what they can provide. The simple outfit I wore that night had become legendary among my staff. A story they told new employees about the owner who was mocked in her own restaurant and responded with grace and strength rather than anger and vindictiveness. It had become a reminder that appearances deceive, that assumptions blind, that the person you underestimate might be the one who holds all the power. And that lesson, more than any recipe or business strategy or financial success, was the true legacy of Marcello's. Not just great food or elegant ambiance or impeccable service, but a reminder that every person deserves respect, that dignity isn't determined by wealth or status, and that the greatest strength is knowing your worth even when others cannot see it. Have you ever been underestimated or disrespected by someone who did not know your true worth? Have you ever had to choose between maintaining peace and maintaining your self-respect? How did you find the courage to stand up for yourself when it meant risking relationships you valued? Share your story in the comments below and let us know what you learned about yourself when you finally decided you deserved better. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today to find their own strengths, their own voice, their own path to reclaiming their dignity. Remember, you are not defined by how others see you. You are defined by how you see yourself, how you treat others, and whether you have the courage to demand the respect you deserve. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to accept less than that, no matter what it costs, no matter who walks away, no matter how uncomfortable the truth becomes. Because in the end, living authentically, standing in your truth, and refusing to diminish yourself for anyone's comfort is not cruelty. It is the most profound act of self-love there is. And from that foundation, from that place of knowing your worth, everything else becomes possible. Genuine relationships, real respect, meaningful connection, and the kind of peace that comes from finally being enough exactly as you are.